It's the Weekly Wrap with your host, broadcasting legend Bruce Wolf, and his trusty sidekick, comedian Tim Slagle. And now, without further ado, Bruce Wolf.
Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the Weekly Wrap. And now my favorite part of the show where I guess what Tim's background is going to be. Tim, I'm going to say you've got Mrs. O'Leary's cow torching the city of Chicago because that's what we can expect within the first few months of the Brandon Johnson administration. Am I right?
Very close, Bruce.
There's nothing like, you know what? That looks like my dad's old hardware store at 3905 West 16th Street.
Welcome to New Detroit.
Yeah, I mean, now did you grow up in Detroit or the suburbs?
No,
or?
I grew up outside Detroit.
Outside Detroit.
Yeah, about 15 miles south.
Okay. So, I mean, is it exaggeration?
I saw the
or should we be fearful that Chicago's going to become Detroit the way Detroit was?
When you go around saying that the corporations have to pay their fair share, I mean, most of them already have the U-Hauls packed. They're just waiting for an excuse.
It's interesting because I actually was depressed as the results were coming in, and I could see that Johnson was going to win, and I've been kind of down since then. And I haven't lived in Detroit since 1958. In Detroit, Chicago, excuse me, since 1958.
Yeah,
and,
you moved to Chicago in 2023,
right? But we've had Paul Vallis. We've had Paul Vallis on the show here, before
friend of the show,
announced that he was running, and he's a nice guy personally. Talked to him a few times, and I thought he was the best hope for Chicago. On the other hand, I do take a perverse satisfaction in Chicago getting democracy good and hard, pardon my making. And just like I enjoy liberal professors and even J.K. Rowling being hoisted by their own petard. You asked for this, folks. Liberals, you asked for this. You're going to get it. This more. And then, of course, you're always thinking, well, he's going to, and he gives you a little bit of the rhetoric. I'm going to try to be the mayor of all the people. And then apparently he invoked on CBS this morning, he was interviewed, and he invoked the name of Michael Brown. Well, I mean, say what you will about, some practices of the police in Ferguson. That's the Ferguson case. I know it's tough to keep them straight, right? But I
can't remember anything before Floyd.
The cops weren't guilty. Right. In the Michael Brown case. So if that's what he's looking to, fine. Send out the social workers, send in the clowns. It's and supposedly, and we talked about this a few weeks ago too. The minority wards or the black wards were his stronghold. That's where the crime is. I mean, if they want that kind of policing, okay. I mean, what are you going to do?
Are you sure though that's you see? I'm thinking that Johnson was the pick of the teachers union. That's,
totally. Yeah, right.
And don't teachers get the day off to work the polls?
Oh well, look, as my old colleague Marge Halperin from WXRT said, it was about the ground game, and she's a radical. And she and this is so basically you have teachers brutalizing the cops because the teachers get out there and the cops, as she said, don't actually go and knock on doors. So that sure.
I think a lot of cops won't be too. I think a lot of cops will be looking forward to trying to work from home, see if they can do remote policing.
Yeah, really. We can't chase you if we're on Zoom.
We'll send you a Zoom link.
Turn yourself in. We'll come together. We'll sing Kumbaya. And of course, people are saying, well, the middle class is going to leave Chicago now. I thought they left a long time ago. I mean, I thought that's one of the big problems with Chicago. I think
there's middle class youth. I mean, there's something cool about right after college moving to Chicago for a couple of years.
Now, Tim, I must interrupt you. Because we have a tweet up from Rahm Emanuel saying, congratulations to Brandon Johnson on being elected the 57th mayor of Chicago. It's a job of a lifetime, Brandon. Your success is the second city success, and I'm rooting for your success. And of course, as we well know, that it was Rahm Emanuel quashing the Laquan McDonald video that has led to this day. The Laquan McDonald video is the gift that keeps on giving. And Ram isn't even in this country anymore. As you well know, Tim, he is now our ambassador to Japan. And why is he the ambassador to Japan, Tim?
Because he always wanted to be tall. And
there
in fact,
you go.
in fact, I believe they're going to have to raise the podium for the first time in several administrations.
So, somebody quoted. Did you remember Dick Tuck?
I
Wasn't
do
he?
not.
I think
that's
he was
that's a person, not a procedure, right?
Exactly. Dick Tuck once said, "The people have spoken, the bastards." So, maybe we're gonna have to put up a moat, or Chicago's, to keep people in.
Well, that's kind of what's
going to happen.
That's kind of what happened to Detroit. It kind of became an atoll. You know how there's those rings in the South Pacific where the volcano collapsed, but the coral reef remains. That's pretty much what Detroit is right now, just a ring.
No, so what's going to happen is it's going to be like as somebody said, the San Francisco. Dick Tuck was he lost the 1966 California State Senate election to Richard Nixon. There we go. Thanks, Chris. I knew that. So we had Tricky Dick and we had Dick Tuck. And we had a tricky Dick Tuck.
Speaking of Dick Tuck, are we going to be talking about Bud Light later?
Oh, yeah. Question about that. A little foreshadowing here. But so now I've totally lost my train of thought here.
I'm sorry. I had to bring it down to fourth grade level.
There was this guy,
sorry.
Thomas Piketty, who wrote the book, What's the Matter with Kansas? Basically, the people don't vote their self-interest. And of course, according to him, their self-interest is to vote for the socialists. But it just doesn't seem, you have people who want charter schools. They don't like the Chicago Teachers Union ruling things. They can't stand the crime in their neighborhoods, and yet, I guess we could look at the bright side. A guy who once said that he actually uttered the word Republican in a somewhat favorable manner, almost won the election. I guess that's
he was on a Republican podcast, wasn't he?
Right. Yes. Totally. Do Jonah Goldberg was interviewing this guy who's written about public sector unions, Philip K. Howard, and he had him on a few weeks ago, and he was talking about there was an 18-year study in Illinois that showed that 2 out of 95,000 teachers had been dismissed for poor performance over a certain number of years. 2 out of 95,000. That's the kind of job security that these teachers have, and
it takes a lot of work to keep your students graduating in the fifth percentile.
And on the bright side, doesn't look like there's going to be a teacher's strike. Not when you own the mayor of the city. There's nobody on the other side of the bargaining table. So do we have this tweet? I don't know if you got it, Chris. It was from ABC 7. And this is actually about, you see that guy who he had created an app. He was pretty famous among app creators, and he got stabbed to death in San Francisco. Okay.
Oh, yeah. It was a money app, right? It was.
Yeah. And ABC 7 had a tweet that said, his death further inflamed debate over public safety in San Francisco and its moribund downtown, which has not yet bounced back from the pandemic. And what I found that interesting was ABC 7 is basically the liberal establishment station in the city of Chicago. This wasn't a quote that they used. They were calling it their own. They were making this editorial judgment about San Francisco's downtown being moribund. If Ron Majors were still around, he never would have allowed that kind of tweet to appear. I agree with it totally. Sure. But I think I think the guy who hacked Paul Vallis's account hacked into ABC 7's as well. So
did San Francisco have the kind of looting that we had during the pandemic?
I think they don't have a downtown. Their housing stock is more expensive and lousier, and that's probably the direction we're headed. But let's pivot real quickly to north of the border, Wisconsin, and everybody's trying to draw a lot of conclusions. How horrible this was for Republicans and everything. But Wisconsin's an anomaly. That was all about that. When the Dobbs decision came down, Wisconsin reverted to an 1849 law about abortion, which has no exceptions. And so there was this Wisconsin Supreme Court race, and there was no way that the Republican was going to win that. But in the meantime, there were some ballot initiatives that were very conservative that passed in Wisconsin. So Wisconsin is still split, but there's no question the Republicans are going to have to come up with some platform about abortion at the state level, because the Democrats are going to scare the bejesus out of the electorate if there's no exceptions.
Yeah, there's nothing that energizes the youth more than the suggestion that they might not be able to have sex simply for fun. Totally. Recreational sex on the ballot in Wisconsin.
There's no question about it. And
like you said, other conservative proposals passed. So they just went in there. They just went in there, voted for no child support, and off they went.
No, right. Youth is served. I'm glad of that, and so everybody is happy. All right, coming up, of course, the other big thing. The Trump indictment, which I'm exhausted over, but we'll resurrect it. Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the weekly wrap.
Well, I think the unprecedented indictment of a former president of the United States on a campaign finance issue is an outrage. And it appears to millions of Americans to be nothing more than a political prosecution that's driven by a prosecutor who literally ran for office on the pledge to indict the former president.
Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the weekly wrap. So, Tim, I actually did watch Trump's speech the other night, and it just seemed lackluster to me. First of all, I appreciated it because he not only defended himself against the charge brought by Alvin Bragg, but against every other charge that's ever been brought against him and will be brought against him in the future. And, I have a short attention span, so I was glad, that he covered it all in one. There was, and he misstated a lot of things, but sure, that's the guy that I voted for twice and probably will vote for again. But,
you're voting for him twice next year, I guarantee.
Oh, well, I won't vote for him twice next year. I'll vote against him in the primary, but in the general, I'll wind up voting for him again. Okay. So, but
I think your attitude might change by the time we get there. I think you'll be so fed up at all the attacks and these obvious political prosecutions that you'll say, it's like somebody said that it was like that he was the Flight 93. I forget who said it. Said it was the Flight 93 candidate. It was like we're going down. Let's rush the cockpit.
Well, there's no question. Look, you don't even have to be a conservative or Republican. Look, here's the headline: Van Jones was torched for saying he felt bad as Donald Trump looked sad. If even Van Jones is sympathetic. I remember when I used to do this, when I did the show with Dan Proft on WLS, we had Van Jones on the air. And we're talking to him, and we were actually winning the argument. We were winning it. We had him on points, but then Dan exploded. And called him. I forgot the exact phrase, but part of it was that he was a suck toy for the left, and and I just, and then, which is true. I guarantee it's true. But I looked at Dan and I was like, we had him won. We won this, and then you hit him with the folding chair, and you got disqualified. But anyway, but even Van Jones, felt sorry for Trump. I did communicate via Twitter with Andy McCarthy, the legal expert for Fox and National Review, and so I said, Well, is the question before the jury going to be, did Trump pay the hush money to help his election chances, or did he pay it to keep his wife from being embarrassed? And Andy answered to me, if it ever gets to a jury, I'll be very, very surprised. Don't see that it matters, though. There are all kinds of expenses a candidate might think help his election chances. That does not per se make them in-kind donations under federal election law, over which Bragg has no jurisdiction. I mean, other than that, I mean, so the case may be thrown out. And I notice the next appearance is like December 4th, but it could be thrown. Oh, and Trump has asked for it to be moved to Staten Island, and maybe it'll be thrown out, but and never get to a jury.
Is Staten Island the most Republican borough?
It's got to be. Oh yeah, isn't that where all the cops live?
Is it?
I'm pretty sure that's where all the the first responders live. Is in Staten Island? I'm not positive, but
I remember there were a lot in Queens on September 11th. I remember.
Oh, okay. I don't know.
It was there. There was that one cop that said, "Come at me, bro," or something.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, we know
that a plane crashed in Queens like the next day.
Oh, well, okay. Well, we know one thing: Manhattan is as blue as it gets. So, man,
he would have a better chance as a black man in Jim Crow, Arkansas, than in Manhattan.
Well, it's interesting though, but because on the other hand, as he has said, he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and nothing would happen. So there are
actually, he would have been better off shooting someone on Fifth Avenue,
right?
Because Alvin Bragg would have downgraded.
He wouldn't have done anything.
A misdemeanor.
That was a great. You had a tweet to that point a little bit earlier. So I was watching the speech, and he did say one thing that bothered me. I mean, and it was just he said, had the Hunter laptop seen the light of day during the election campaign, that that mattered like 17% in the vote. I don't think it mattered that much, but it's okay. He was on a roll. It's fine.
He didn't need 17%.
He didn't need 17%.
He just needed 12,000 votes. I mean, and he's going to be arraigned for that one too.
Right. So everybody went over, this. Oh, one of the great things about the indictment is it doesn't actually list the crime for which he's being accused of. I mean, it has the bank fraud counts, which are, and there are 34 felonies because everything was sliced and diced into as many different pieces as it could, so they could ratchet up the number to 34. But the bank,
I'm gonna defer to your experience here because I haven't read many indictments. It looked to me, it read like a freshman term paper.
Well, they were making it. My understanding is they were trying to make it so it was palatable to the public. But the counts, the bank counts
it was just cut paste.
Right. But that's
and then change the invoice numbers.
But you need, in order to get this thing raised up to a felony, they have to show that he did something on the federal level, because they don't have it with the state, and it's nobody's buying it that he violated the campaign finance rules.
Well, here's what I think, and we know that Michael Cohen pled guilty to campaign fine and breaking campaign finance law. I have a friend who was an FEC commissioner, and he said no, he didn't. There was no law broken by Michael Cohen. He essentially pled guilty to a non-crime in exchange for leniency on his tax crimes, which were
what they did was they threw that in.
Right.
It wasn't going to cost him anything more to.
No, and he actually got less. He got less. They said,
it actually
guilty
helped
to this
him.
one too. Exactly.
It helped him.
But that's what I think. That's what I think, and that's why they can't name it because it's not a crime in the first place. But he pled guilty to it, so it must be a crime, right?
Well, that's interesting. But you're supposed to name the crime. As Andy McCarthy wrote somewhere else. How's Trump going to avoid double jeopardy if he doesn't know what the first, single jeopardy was, Alex? And did they do that in the form of a question? So yeah, it's
And I think it was John Solomon that brought up that
okay.
that Hillary Clinton actually broke the law by hiding the Steele dossier, the payment she made for the Steele dossier.
Okay.
The million.
Oh, yeah.
And in fact, that was such a violation of the law. She was actually fined by the FEC.
Right.
And her campaign headquarters in the time were in the borough of Brooklyn.
And you think that Robert Morgenthau or whoever was the Manhattan district attorney would have brought her to.
Right. And it is a crime.
So
that means the statute of limitations.
Yeah.
And I think it probably happened about the same exact time. It would have been 2016, 2017, right?
Interesting. It could be on point. Look, just looking at it generally, as somebody mentioned, you can't go after Trump if you weren't going to go after Bill Clinton over perjury, because he flat out lied. And everyone said, oh, it's just sex. No, that was perjury. They had him. Yeah. And well, no, we don't want. And the Democrats said, oh, forget about it.
Depends on your definition of sex.
Right.
And that new definition of sex, high school boys all over Utah celebrated that.
So a lot of double standards, a lot of whataboutism. Let's move very quickly here to, buried in all this. Did you see they found out more stuff about that Chinese balloon that it actually was like doing figure eights over military bases, and we knew about it as soon as it took off, and we even let it gather intelligence.
Sure.
Why did we do that?
Biden knows China a favor.
It looks like it.
It's It's would he be in the White House today were it not for China? I don't think so.
I don't know. I'm starting to put on my tinfoil hat now, Tim. Maybe you're getting me to vote for Trump.
I think a lot of the money. I think a lot of the money that showed up as Zuckerbucks were laundered. Was just essentially Chinese money laundered through Facebook or Bloomberg, they all made these 9-digit contributions.
Oh, okay.
Zuckerberg, Bloomberg, for the election, for election security, and all that money, I'm sure was paid on the back end with more business for these people. Bloomberg China, Facebook China, Warner Brothers China. So that's what I think.
Well, but at least we're making some feints towards banning TikTok. So maybe now
that it's been doing figure eights all over my mobile phone for the past year.
Exactly. So I saw this tweet from the Lieutenant Governor of Virginia, Winsome Sears, and we like Winsome Sears, of course, and so I really shouldn't pick on Winsome Sears, but she had a tweet, and when you're tweeting about education, you should really be careful how you say things. She says, sadly, previous administrations mistakenly thought lower standards would help erase disparities, but it has exacerbated them. We must restore excellence in education for all students in Virginia. And I was a little exasperated that she didn't use exacerbated if you're talking about education, but her heart is in the right place.
Irregardless, Bruce.
Yeah, right. You're right. You're absolutely right. Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the Weekly Wrap.
It was hijacking or terrorism or mechanical failure or pilot error, but what if it was something fully that we don't really understand? A lot of people have been asking about that, about black holes and on and on and on, and all of these conspiracy theories. Let's look at this. Noah says, what else can you think about? Black hole, Bermuda Triangle. And then Deji says, just like the movie Lost. And of course, they're also referencing the Twilight Zone, which is a very similar plot. That's what people are saying. I know it's preposterous, but is it preposterous, you think, Mary?
Well, it is. A black hole is about, a small black hole would suck in our entire universe. So we know it's not that. Bermuda Triangle is often weather, and Lost is a TV show.
Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the Weekly Wrap.
We should title this segment of the show Lemon Memories.
Sure. You insist on bringing up Rahm Emanuel every week for that tired old joke. I insist on bringing up Don Lemon because, well, I mean, he's thrust himself into the limelight again. But for those of you who don't know,
he's actually in trouble for thrusting himself, isn't he?
Yeah, there you go. Don Lemon reportedly refused to do at least 2 assignments when he worked at Channel 5 here. And when I finally got to Channel 5 years later, I didn't refuse anything. I even did the traffic, even though there's no such thing as a TV in a person's car. But Don Lemon, and apparently
maybe those stories just ended up in a black hole.
Don Lemon, there's a pattern of misbehavior by Don Lemon, because the latest thing is that he was harassing some female reporter who had gotten the plum job of getting to go to Iraq in 2008, and he was harassing her with texts, and they traced it back to him, so they knew that he did this, and he wasn't fired back then because he's Teflon. But apparently, as somebody was saying, whoever leaked this now is probably setting the stage for dumping him, because nobody's watching CNN anyway. So, why not and he's just a bunch of trouble. So get rid of him. But he made it last a long time. All right. So I've got this question, and Tim, take 5 seconds to think about it, because this would be a tough one if you were wearing a sash that said Miss Detroit, because look, I listening to this guy, David Bahnsen, he's a real smart economics guy, very conservative, thinks, we're basically going to hell in a handbasket because all the money that we've got is going to be paying off the national debt. Remember that? When we cared about things like that, and we have a very low growth rate. And
those were the days before we realized you could just print yourself out of debt.
Well, right. There you go. But on the other hand, so who Bjorn Lomborg is? He's one of these guys who writes about the climate, and he's not a nut. Okay, so he's actually a lefty who
ironically studied economics. So
yeah. So he says that even with some global warming, the average person is going to be 434% richer by the end of the century. So we're supposed to be 450% richer, but because of some of this global warming, which he doesn't think is as bad as a lot of the alarmists do, we're only going to be 434% richer. So here's what I want you to answer is, are we going down the road that David Bahnsen says, or are we going to be 4 times as rich by the end of the century? Reconcile those two, if you will, and then you may tap dance after that, or sing a song if that's what your talent is. Okay.
Well, I think it'll depend on whether or not we embrace the Green New Deal, because if we just let the global warming happen, but what's the big deal? It's all my coastal properties are going to be worthless. But
well, it's interesting. The Green New Deal is actually the Inflation Reduction Act. So that is going to that's actually going to reduce inflation, according to the Biden administration.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate
nothing reduces inflation like putting up windmills and charging stations for cars.
So NPR, poor NPR. There's a couple of things about NPR. One was apparently they are designated as state affiliated on Twitter, and they take exception to that because they say, only a very minor portion of their budget comes from the federal government. Sure. However,
then get rid of it.
Well, that's one thing. Another thing is a lot of their affiliates get government subsidies. So yeah, somewhere it's coming in from the government for them. Also, here's the story with layoffs. NPR becomes the latest media outlet to cut jobs, and a lot of the workers at NPR think that NPR discriminates. Oh, isn't that surprising that NPR, the liberal bastion, somehow makes exceptions for itself, as they always do. It's
right. Yeah, they might all be white, but they pronounce their last names like they did in the country of their ancestry.
Sure.
They love to do that, and I think that's actually where that comes from. Is that people now? It's like you don't say Bombay, you say Mumbai,
sure,
or Pakistan. That's all.
No,
that's
I
NPR.
think I mentioned this once. I mentioned this once that when I worked at Channel 5, and I love mentioning that I work at Channel 5 because to me that's like cachet, but even though nobody cares about it, but I do. So there was a female news anchor who, this was around the time there was that remember there were a bunch of people stuck in a mine in Chile, and she kept pronouncing it Chile, which is how they pronounce it down there. But I said, okay, well, if we're going to do that, should we call Israel Eretz Yisrael every time? I got no response to that.
Nobody has a right to virtue signal over that as long as they say Germany.
Exactly.
I actually think that English is the only language that calls it Germany. I think every other one they call it Deutsch.
You know what? And it's not Roma, it's Rome, because that's how we say it, okay? And we rule.
Yeah. Well, I should know because I grew up in Detroit.
There you go. We're watching Yellowstone now. Do you watch Yellowstone?
I do not. I've heard it's
okay.
I heard it's wonderful.
Well, I mean, there was a funny thing because the busty blonde who has the scar on her face, very attractive. No, she's actually very attractive.
Is it a real scar or is it makeup?
She got into a fight or explosion or something like that.
Oh, okay. So it is really
makeup. Good, but she likes to. So she's at a bar by herself, and a Northwestern professor, and I went to Northwestern. He comes in and he tries to hit on her, and she, without him saying another word, she dresses him down as some kind of liberal hypocrite who talks about inequality all the time, but's got a fancy house in whatever resort town there is in Montana where she is, and it's pretty funny that way. But I just like the guy being dressed down that way. Here's a problem. So you watch a show like Yellowstone, and I'm also watching Succession. Do you watch that at all?
I am not.
Okay, that's 0 for 2. Yeah, there's your busty blonde right there.
That's a pretty scar.
It's a pretty scar. I mean, they had to make it somewhat authentic because in reality, she should have lost an eye and like half of her mouth, but they wouldn't have been able to continue with the show after that. But anyway, in both of those shows, I picked it up after not having seen it for a couple of years, and I don't know what's going on. I don't know, but I know that they're trying to screw each other over, and I'm not going to find out. I'm not going to go read recaps from before, but we still watch the shows, and we don't really know what's going on. But Succession is kind of fun, even though I know they're making fun of Fox, and they should make fun of everybody. Yeah, all right. Well,
I felt that way about The Handmaid's Tale.
I wouldn't even watch that.
Really?
I wouldn't even watch it.
I watched season 1 just because it was easier than reading the book.
Oh, okay. All right. We got to get, because as promised, Bud Light is going trans. Oh, and, somebody was saying, don't they know who they're, drinks Bud Light? It's old white guys. Yeah, they probably do, but they want to, old white guys are going to die. And they're trying to get to, the hip trans and fellow trans, fellow travelers of trans.
But shouldn't it be Bud Light IPA?
Okay.
if that's right. If that's what they're trying to do. Here's the thing. It's trying too hard. Pabst Blue Ribbon became trendy just because it was just out of irony.
Right.
Bud Light, if they wanted to follow down that, keep their reputation.
Yeah.
But no,
but I mean, Nike's doing this too with this, Dylan Mulvaney, who I don't know except for the fact that they have him, her, they,
Is that Dylan Mulvaney on the Bud Light can too?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
So, it reminds me, this of a sick joke about Bud Light. Do you remember the sick joke?
I don't think
After
I do.
the Challenger exploded? And
Oh, yeah.
Krista
yeah.
McAuliffe was supposedly said, I said a Bud Light. I mean, that's how. I mean, it was a sick joke, which it's still too soon to even tell it.
I thought it was because they couldn't get 7-Up. I thought that was the.
Right. So, but the problem is now when we've gone through the looking glass, how many trans people are there in the United States? It's less than 0.5%, right?
I think
not
well,
that you should discriminate against them.
I think it's growing.
Well, they're social contagion, of course.
Yeah. Yep.
So pretty soon everybody will be. But yeah, it's a trendy thing. They know what they're doing, Nike and Bud Light. I wouldn't know how to make dime one out of that.
Kid Rock disagrees, though.
Oh, I hope so. All right.
And for me, Kid Rock is Bud Light.
Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the weekly wrap.
And she's like, well, give her a break. She doesn't understand. She was in attendance.
She was intense.
She saw what was going on in the arena. She knows the backdrop of this story. The number one trending topic. What was, Skip? It wasn't an LSU one. It was Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark.
Yep.
And so she's a doctor. If she didn't know, she should have known before she opened her mouth and blurted this dumb scenario out because they played hard. Skip, everybody played hard.
Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the weekly wrap. I object, Shannon Sharp. If Jill Biden is a doctor, I'm a doctor. I've got a Juris Doctor degree. She's doctor of education. Come on, everybody knows that.
Sounding very much like a Jewish mother right there, doesn't it?
There we go. So yeah, my daughter, the doctor.
She's a doctor.
Here's the thing. It was interesting. I actually somewhat sympathize with Jill Biden. I mean, here she is. She's a woman. She sees, you've got these women that played in this championship basketball game that got quite a bit of attention for women's basketball, for men's basketball too. And just for the record, I didn't watch that game. I didn't watch the NCAA men's championship. Yeah, I saw the last 2 minutes of it. That was it. Because my brackets were wrecked weeks ago. I know you didn't watch any of this either, right?
No, I didn't watch any. But I was excited to find out that there were no women with penises on either team.
Well, here's what I was going to say. This LSU team that is threatening, because all Jill Biden what about the sisterhood? We're all in this together.
Yeah,
this was a great game. Everybody should get to the participation trophy. Everybody should get to go to the White House. I didn't think that women were cutthroat like that. they have so much testosterone in them that no, I'm not going to the White House if the Iowa team is going too. And I've just got a message for you, Ms. Angel Reese of LSU. If you're not careful, we're going to put trans guys on the court, and then you won't go going anywhere either.
I wonder if Jill wonders. I wonder if Jill wonders if why they have 2 scores for every game. I mean, shouldn't they just? Would that be the leftist dream? Just compile both scores together and just let's see how many scores. Let's see how many points we can score together.
Why all the competition over this? It's not about winning.
Yeah,
it's about the exercise. And I mean, and you have competition like that. That's the kind of mentality that leads to wars. No, I mean, it was so masculine. The worst things about toxic masculinity exhibited by LSU. Although I thought it was funny because Barack Obama had tweeted congratulations to the LSU team, so that Angel Reese said, well, we'll just go to the Obama's house instead, which has got the ultimate diss of Joe Biden, that he got to be the president of the United States. Yeah. How quickly we could put out a a trans guy out on the court, pistol Patricia Maravich. You know how fast that could happen. So, you're not watching the Masters, right? You don't care about that either.
I am not watching the Masters.
Well, it's a tradition like no other.
I know that. I know it's a very, very important golf game.
You do know that they allowed these players from the Arab Tour, the LIV Tour, to play. And the Masters, total double speak. I just love it. They made an announcement, months ago, as to whether these LIV players were going to get to play with the PGA players in the Masters. And they said, regrettably, and I'd like to read this in the voice of Hootie Johnson, who is no longer the head of Augusta National. Now they got some Fred Ridley guy, but Hootie Johnson, regrettably, recent actions have divided men's professional golf by diminishing the virtues of the game and the meaningful legacies of those who built it. But we're going to let the LIV players play because that's really going to be a lot of fun. It's going to enhance the competition. So they speak out of both sides of their mouth. Somehow this has made golf bad that you've got another tour that's competing with them. I thought competition was what made sports and business so great.
It's a different kind of a tour, though, isn't it? I mean, it's kind of the difference between wrestling and professional wrestling.
Look, all I know is that the guys who joined the LIV tour, Phil Mickelson getting reportedly $200 million and others getting close to it, have raised the purses for the PGA players as well now. So, what are they complaining about? Anyway, I mean,
what do you want? What do you want? 200 million or a green jacket, huh?
Exactly. Well, you're going to get both. It's possible to get both. So, and I'm way too into this stuff. So I watched ESPN, which is covering the early rounds of the Masters. They have a reporter named Gene Wojciechowski, formerly a Chicago newspaper reporter. So he got the Scotty Scheffler, who's like the number one player in golf right now, to do the Larry Sanders money shot cry. Did you watch Larry Sanders? Do you remember that? You remember Larry Sanders at all?
I watched Larry Sanders. I do not know the money shot cry.
There was a time when Larry was being interviewed by somebody, and I can't use the terminology that they used in the show. I don't even think even on this podcast I can, but they call it the money shot when somebody cries in an interview. And Larry wanted it edited out because he said, I'm crying. They said, no, Larry, that's what they interviewed you for, to get them there. You got to leave that in. Anyway, this Gene Wojciechowski gets this Scotty Scheffler, who seems very composed when he's on the course and everything, gets him to cry during the interview about how he wasn't really ready to be the champion. He won the Masters last year. He wasn't really ready for all the accolades and everything that comes with it. And I just wanted to say that I have personally, I have cried myself during interviews when I was the interviewer and I couldn't get squat out of an interviewee. Tim, I have made Bill Maher. Is that how you pronounce his name? I have made him like fall asleep during an interview once. Now, admittedly, I was interviewing him like at 8:00 in the morning, and once interviewed Joan Rivers on the radio, and she was just nice. It was like, come on, can we talk? Have you done much interviewing? Have you done much interviewing? Because sometimes these people, especially if you don't know them, they won't warm up to you, and you got to hit it like within 30 seconds or a minute, and you're trying to get them going, and sometimes it's tough, and it's really, really disappointing. So
it's the closest I come to interviewing is crowd rap. Is that occasionally, if the show is not going very well,
okay,
I will. Where do you work? Where are you from? What's your name? Have you got a dog?
Who was the guy? I forgot his name now. Black guy used to be. Remember, they used to have this improv show like on ABC. And
whose line is it anyway? That one?
Yeah, I think so, or something like
the American version.
Yeah, and they were all really good, and they all did improv. And we had the guy like in our hallway once. He had done an interview with the regular anchors, and I was talking to him, and I was doing my hallway ambush interview, and I said, "Okay, let's do some improv here." And he goes, "Oh no, I can't do that. That No, when I do that on TV, it's like all orchestrated. Wait a minute. It's not orchestrated. It's you wouldn't do. And you know who else? Who else blew me off once?
It's
yeah,
the biggest.
Whose line is it anyway?
Yeah, the biggest joke we used to make about because there was when I came to Chicago, there was like a little rift between comedians, stand-up comedians, and improv artists.
Oh.
And the little joke we used to tell is like, "Hey, these improv lines killed last night."
Right, exactly. So another guy was George Carlin.
Uh-huh.
I George Carlin was great. I'm talking to him in the hallway, and I'm trying to just talk with him and get him going. He says, "Oh no, my man, all my stuff is so well rehearsed." I think he was just blowing me off. Thank you.
Whose line is it anyway? I found out to get like an hour show, they have to actually tape like 5 hours.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's how.
So a lot of the stuff fell flat.
It's like, yeah.
Well, it's got to.
Yeah, they do that on Saturday Night Live too. I understand that the actual the pre-show that they do is about twice as long. Which
well, wait,
boy,
I know they cut out bits and everything, but.
Yeah.
But the show is live, so
no, they do a run through.
Yeah,
they do a whole show. They whole different audience. They do the whole show that they're going to do later that night.
Oh, right.
And they pull out the clunkers. And watching some episodes of Saturday Night Live, I wonder how bad.
What did they pull out?
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, really. Well, you know how it goes.
Be miserable.
I mean, I very seldom watch now, especially because not just because. Of its political bent, but you can get the clips on YouTube or whatever, and you don't have to wade through, Madonna singing. Well, I wouldn't mind seeing her, but it's
really lately.
Yeah, lately. What she did another trans thing, didn't she? God, everybody's doing that right now.
She reinvented herself this time at Dr. Frankenstein's lab.
Hey, okay. We'll close with this, which will really sink the show, because it was put in here by Chris, because I had mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. It's one of our evergreen. It's one of the pieces that would have gotten knocked out by Saturday Night Live in the rehearsal, but it's why I take the last stevia packets in the bowl before I put in another bunch of packets, because I'm afraid that those 2 packets that are at the bottom, that they're just left there, if I pour a bunch of other packets on top of them, they're going to feel left out, like it was their turn to be used. And I actually anthropomorphize stevia packets. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Did you see that there's a story of that plants actually have feelings? That they actually let out a sound when they're in pain? It's something like that, yeah.
So the stevia does have feelings.
Stevia, is not a living, breathing organism, but it is. They are green, right. And silent screams. New research finds plants cry when stressed. So maybe I'm not that far off with the stevia packets. Okay.
Plants cry in pain. Vegetarians prepare to starve to death.
Folks, what you're now hearing is the inner scream of Tim Slagle saying, "Get me out of this show. Your wish is my command." Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle, Weekly Wrap.
And that's the Weekly Wrap on radio and television. Follow Bruce at Bruce Wolf Shy on Twitter and Tim at timslagle.com. The Weekly Wrap with Bruce Wolf, a CP Pods production.